When a customer comes to you and they tell you that they want to move everything into cloud, your answer should never be binary. It shouldn't be a yes or a no, or this is how we do it. The first thing that you should try and understand is why. And you should really try and capture all these requirements before you actually give them a solution. Before we make decisions on cloud, we need to understand what is cloud. If you're watching this, I'm going to assume you're pretty technical. You understand that traditionally infrastructure was 3-tier. There was storage, there was network, and there was compute. And traditionally, most of our customers actually hosted everything on this type of infrastructure. Whether they hosted a Hyper-V platform or a VMware platform, or maybe even before virtualization when we had a single server hosted on a single physical node. That's where our customers used to host their environments, and traditionally there was no issues with it. But then somewhere along the line, managing this physical infrastructure became cumbersome. Patching firmware, patching storage, patching operating system, patching RAID controllers, patching hosts, refreshing hardware, testing UPSs. It was tiring doing all of these things. People are working weekends, people are patching on the weekend, people are making sure everything's done after hours to make sure that production is ready for the coming weekend. It becomes cumbersome. And then along comes cloud. Essentially, other than the marketing gimmicky name cloud, what cloud does is remove the actual need for organizations to manage physical infrastructure. So instead of sitting there and patching a server on a weekend or changing a drive on a failed RAID array, organizations are able to spend their time solely on the operating system and on the environment that's actually keeping their organization running. Basically, providers like AWS and Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure and a whole heap of other ones, they actually just take on the responsibility of managing hardware, leaving the focus on just the operating system layer for most organizations and administrative teams. A quick example. Imagine a 3-node VMware cluster that exists on 3 traditional Dell physical nodes, running 15 virtual machines. The maintenance required on this is ground up. It includes the UPS, the hardware, the firmware, the storage, the cabling, the patching, the rack cost, the data center cost. Now, instead of having all of that, with cloud, we can have all 15 VMs running in one environment where all we have to do is manage the operating system. The hardware is simply not our problem. So these cloud environments started popping up everywhere. So now we have people like AWS and Microsoft Azure and GCP, or who have a presence in many data centers that we're not really aware of because they're secret locations, but have built some type of infrastructure there that we essentially host our servers in, but is completely managed all the way up to the operating system layer by the hosting platform themselves. Okay, so now that you understand what cloud is and the problem that it actually solves, do you really need cloud? Let's go through some of the things that you might actually want to consider before you move your customer to the cloud, or if you are the customer, before you actually decide to take on that journey. The first question is, are you subscribed to this channel? Because if you're not, you're never going to know if you need to go into cloud or not. So please subscribe to the channel. Okay, but seriously, before we move into solution mode, we need to understand a few things about cloud and the things that we should actually consider before we start preparing our solution. The first question is, what is your environment like now, and can it actually be replicated in cloud? Do you have static VMs? Do you have a network environment that's set up in a hub and spoke topology? Do you have a DMZ? Do you need to replicate these things in cloud so that you can actually host those environments there? Do you have connectivity into cloud? And if so, is there enough bandwidth? And if not, what can you do about it? Do you actually have options? Can you actually terminate an express route or a VPN? What is your target state? Draw it out. What would you actually like to build in cloud? Is it really just a replica of on-prem, or do you actually want to make improvements, and do you want to actually get some service improvement out of moving to cloud? Do you think that maybe there is some architectural improvements that you can make that will help you with further solutions? Can you really get rid of everything on-prem? Do you actually have connectivity in all the places that you need connectivity to remove on-prem? I think some people sometimes get carried away when they're talking about what they can move into some type of cloud platform. So we need to sit back and actually understand, what are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? The next thing you need to consider is, do you actually have the skills within your team and within your organization and within the people around you that can actually help you move into cloud? Do you have the skills to migrate? Do you have the skills to administer? Do you have the skills to maintain? Yeah, I get it. There's no maintenance in cloud, but there is some sort of maintenance. It's just a bit different and a bit easier, but you still need some type of maintenance there. So do you actually have those skills? If not, are you willing to hire? And if you're not willing to hire, do you have a trusted partner you can speak to about these type of things? You really need to consider who you can actually deal with when we're talking about cloud, because you need to make sure that you are not taken advantage of and that you are actually being given the right advice to make sure that you have those proper solutions in place by the time things go into production. The next thing you should consider is, do you actually have the budget? Have you done a costing exercise? Maybe you should actually consider using on-premises infrastructure. Maybe you need to do a costing exercise. Maybe you need to compare the cost of on-prem infrastructure to moving everything into the cloud. And by the time you do that, maybe you'll have a business case for more budget. If you are going to spend more in cloud, is there actually any benefit to it? You need to understand that in a lot of businesses, everything comes down to budget. If you cannot justify extra spend in cloud, then you're probably not going to get the budget for it. So make sure that you consider everything. Sometimes, cost-wise, it can be cheaper to run it on premises. And I can attest to that. When you're doing your costing, have you considered everything? Have you considered the cost of compute? Have you considered the cost of networking? Have you considered the cost of storage? Have you considered the cost of licensing? That's a very important one. Licensing, when people do costing exercises, they very commonly forget to add things like Microsoft Windows licensing and Microsoft SQL licensing. And then when it comes time to start moving things, they get bill shock. Have you considered the cost of DR in cloud? So sometimes the cost of DR in cloud can differ greatly from the cost of DR on-prem. So make sure that you do a costing exercise that captures the cost of both of those things. And at the same time that you are doing these cost exercises for DR, make sure that you are really trying to understand the difference between RTOs and RPOs and the benefits of actually moving to cloud, or maybe it's more beneficial to stay on-prem. So really make sure you're capturing all those requirements to make sure that not only you are meeting cost requirements, but you're also meeting compliance requirements. The next question is, can you do it securely? So if you have some type of secure environment on premises and you are hoping to move it into cloud, well, the first thing that you should be doing is actually checking if you can actually build the same type of environment with the same type of security and governance in cloud. If you do go to cloud, what benefits are you getting security-wise? Can you do it securely? Can you actually achieve all those security requirements that you have on-prem? The thing with on-prem is that you've had on-prem for potentially 20, 30 years. And you've probably built that environment over time. You've refreshed and you've done service improvement and you've put in new features and you've got all these sort of things that are happening on-prem and that you've taken 30 years to build on-prem. And you're going to move them all into a cloud platform where it's all greenfield and you have to do everything again. Now, this is a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes it's good because you get to actually build a new environment and capture all those requirements and build them as you please. But then other times you may have an issue where you can't actually build the same type of thing that you've built on-prem. So consider those things as well. Are you losing control? Do you need some type of control that you have on-prem that you can't have in cloud? I know that sometimes there is some compliance requirements that really need you to continue to have control at all times, whether it's in a cloud platform or whether it's on-prem. The last thing that we'll talk about today is compliance requirements. Sometimes organizations have a compliance requirement where they just can't move things into cloud. They need to actually have it hosted on-prem. I know that was the case for a long time with many departments in Australia. This is probably the case in many other countries. So consider these things as well. Maybe you have some type of data sovereignty requirements, so make sure that your cloud platform can actually host that data where you need it to be hosted. So if you're going to have a storage account somewhere, make sure that that storage account is available to be hosted in the location where you're allowed to keep it. There's also a benefit in moving into cloud when you're talking about compliance requirements, because a lot of these cloud platforms, I know Microsoft has this, a lot of these cloud platforms have a place where you can actually view the compliance requirements for your organization and check if you're actually meeting those requirements in the portal itself. So it might actually be helpful. So have a look at what's available to you as well. I hope that helps. I hope that has actually helped you understand what problem cloud is solving and also help you capture the correct requirements when you're thinking whether to move into cloud or not. If you did get some value out of it, please smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. And if you do need to speak to a professional, please feel free to reach out. We'll see you next time.